Number 1. Sergeant Maliek Kearney. Maliek Kearney was a U.S. Army sergeant stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. He was married to Carlin Ramirez, a 24-year-old Army private first class assigned to Fort Meade, Maryland. The couple had a 4-month-old daughter. Kearney and Private Ramirez were married for approximately 5 weeks before they started having issues and they got separated. Kearney had been violent with Ramirez, which caused her to relocate to a different location far from him, and obtained a protective order through the Army prohibiting all contact between them. Despite the orders, Kearney made plans to visit and murder his wife. He recruited his mistress, Dolores Delgado, and they both mapped out plans on how to carry out the plan without being caught. Firstly, he instructed Dolores to carefully track her vehicle's gas mileage from where they were to where his wife was, and use a can to buy the exact gas mileage so he won't have to stop at any gas station to refill. Afterwards, Dolores provided him with a firearm to carry out the murder. On the 24th of August, 2015, Kearney drove his mistress's car from South Carolina to Severn, Maryland, with the intent to murder his wife. He followed back roads to avoid being tracked. Upon arrival, Kearney entered Ramirez's townhouse using his key. An argument started, during which Ramirez reiterated her desire to end their relationship. Kearney then shot Ramirez 3 times at close range, resulting in her death. To mislead investigators, he staged the scene to resemble an assault by removing her pants and pulling down her underwear. He then placed their infant daughter in Ramirez's arms before leaving the scene. He left his child in his dead mother's arms and drove back to South Carolina, where his girlfriend disposed the murder weapons, and they both lived like nothing had happened. Back at Ramirez's apartment, neighbors noticed the crying baby and informed the police. When police entered the home, they discovered the lifeless body of Carlin Ramirez. After over a year later, investigators identified Kearney as a suspect due to his disturbing relationship with Ramirez and the existence of a protective order against him, as well as the confession from his girlfriend, Dolores, who was initially the key suspect, but she decided to tell the truth for a reduced sentence. During questioning, Dolores cooperated with authorities, revealing details of their plan, including her role in providing the weapon and assisting in the disposal of evidence, providing her vehicle, and also assisting him in buying a gas to refill his car on the road. She also testified against Kearney during his trial. During his trial, the victim's mother recounted how Kearney came to her daughter's funeral and stared at the coffin, telling her, "For all we know, the killer is among us." She begged the judge in between tears to show no mercy to Kearney, stating that he saw little value in human life and he should be kept away from the society. In August 2018, after an 11-day trial, Kearney was convicted of interstate travel to commit domestic violence, resulting in death, and using a firearm during the commission of a crime of violence. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on the 30th of November, 2018. Kearney showed no remorse and little emotion as a judge sentenced him to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of his wife, stating, "There is no moment that I don't miss Carlin. The love that I have for her grows stronger as each day passes." The judge pointedly told him that he was lying, and he doesn't believe him. Dolores Delgado, his girlfriend and accomplice, also pleaded guilty to interstate travel to commit domestic violence, resulting in death. She was sentenced to 17 years in federal prison on the 7th of September, 2018. As of April 2025, Kearney, who is now 43 years old, has served approximately 6 years and 5 months of his life sentence. His daughter, the infant who lay next to her mother's body, is now being raised by family. Number 2. Staff Sergeant Robert Bales. On the night of the 11th of March, 2012, former Staff Sergeant Robert Bales, who was born in Norwood, Ohio, and had enlisted in the U.S. Army after the September 11 attacks left his post at Camp Belem Bay, a remote base in Kandahar province, Afghanistan. He then entered the villages of Al-Qazai and Najiban, where he murdered 16 Afghan civilians, including 9 children and 7 adults. Some of the victims' bodies were set on fire. After attacking the village, Bales returned to the base and then left again to commit further killings. He was apprehended upon his return to Camp Belem Bay with blood on his clothing and weapons. He was taken into custody and later transferred to the United States for trial. Before his military service, he worked as a stockbroker. He served 3 tours in Iraq and was on his 4th deployment, his first to Afghanistan, when the tragic events occurred. In June 2013, Bales pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. During his hearing in court, the judge asked him why he thought he was guilty. He boldly read from his statements that he left the village stability platform and went to the nearby village of Al-Qazai. While he was inside a compound in Al-Qazai, he observed a female named Naik Marga. After seeing the female, he formed the desire to murder her, and he eventually murdered her by shooting her with a firearm. He was also asked why he carried out the attack, and he stated, "Sir, as far as why, I've asked that question 1,000,000 times since then. There's not a good reason in this world for why I did the horrible things I did." In August 2013, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The Afghan families of the victims rejected his life sentence, stating that they will not be satisfied unless he is executed. One of them stated, "If they don't execute him, they are showing their power. He martyred 16 of our people, but they are not executing the one person who did all that. Would they forgive us if we murdered 16 Americans?" As of April 2025, Bales, who is now 51 years old, has served approximately 12 years of his life sentence, and he's incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the military's only maximum security facility. Given that he was sentenced to life without parole, he is expected to remain incarcerated for the remainder of his life. Number 3. Sergeant John M. Russell. Former Sergeant John Russell was a communications specialist serving his 3rd tour of duty in Iraq with the 54th Engineer Battalion. Before the incident that led to his conviction, Russell exhibited signs of severe depression and paranoia, leading to multiple visits to military mental health facilities. He believed his unit was attempting to end his military career, which exacerbated his mental distress. On May 11, 2009, at Camp Liberty near Baghdad, Iraq, Russell was escorted from a counseling session at the Camp Liberty Combat Stress Center following a heated argument. During the escort back to his unit at Camp Stryker, Russell overpowered his escort, seized an unsecured M16 rifle, and drove back to the clinic. Upon arrival, he opened fire, resulting in the deaths of 5 U.S. military personnel. 54-year-old Army Major Matthew P. Housel, 52-year-old Navy Commander Charles K. Springle, 25-year-old Army Staff Sergeant Christian E. Bueno Galdos, 20-year-old Army Specialist Jacob D. Barton, and 19-year-old Army Private First Class Michael E. Yates, Jr. After the shooting, Russell was apprehended immediately and charged with 5 counts of premeditated murder, 1 count of aggravated assault, and 1 count of attempted murder. Initially, during his court-martial, the military prosecutors sought the death penalty. However, in May 2013, Russell pleaded guilty to unpremeditated murder as part of a plea agreement to avoid capital punishment. The military judge, Colonel David Kahn, determined that the murders were premeditated, leading to a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Russell's defense attorneys argued that he suffered from severe depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a possible brain injury from previous combat experiences, which they claimed diminished his responsibility for the murders. As of April 2025, John Russell, who is currently 60 years old, has served approximately 11 years and 11 months of his life sentence, and he's incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks. This tragic incident highlights the critical importance of addressing mental health issues among military personnel and ensuring that adequate support systems are in place to prevent such devastating outcomes. Number 4. Sergeant William Kreutzer. William Kreutzer Jr. was a member of the 325th Airborne Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He had enlisted in the U.S. Army in February 1992 and was promoted to sergeant in October of 1994. Throughout his service, Kreutzer reportedly faced persistent teasing and practical jokes from fellow soldiers, leading to feelings of isolation and resentment. He was nicknamed Crazy Kreutzer. During one of his time on duty, he broke down and expressed thoughts of harming soldiers. He was immediately taken in for questioning. He was disciplined and later sent to mental health professionals who indicated that he suffered from anger and low self-esteem, and confirmed that he was not a threat to the other soldiers, but he was not allowed to use weapons for 2 weeks. A day before the attack, he called SPC Burl Mays, informing him that he was going to open fire on the soldiers during their training. On the day of the attack, around 5 a.m., SPC Burls Mays noticed that he was missing. He immediately reported to his superiors, but they dismissed the claim, saying that Kreutzer was just a baby, but they allowed Mays to search his room, and there he discovered Kreutzer's well-written will. Kreutzer had already gone out and concealed himself in a tree line adjacent to the stadium during their morning physical training at Towle Stadium on Fort Bragg. He was armed with a 5.5, 6x45mm NATO Pac West Arms A, R15 style semi-automatic rifle, a .22 caliber Ruger, 10/22 semi-automatic rifle, a Glock 17 Gen 2 9mm semi-automatic pistol, and a Spyderco folding knife. As approximately 1,300 soldiers assembled, Kreutzer opened fire, resulting in the death of Major Stephen Mark Badger and wounding 18 others. During the assault, several unarmed members of the brigade staff, led by Lieutenant Colonel Mike Kerrigan, confronted Kreutzer, forcing him to relocate multiple times. Eventually, 3 Special Forces soldiers, Sergeant First Class Tony Miner, Sergeant First Class Bob Howes, and Sergeant Edward Mongold, managed to tackle and disarm him. Kreutzer was then taken into custody by military police. In 1996, Kreutzer was convicted of premeditated murder, 18 counts of attempted premeditated murder, violating a lawful general regulation, and larceny of government munitions. He was initially sentenced to death. However, in March 2004, the Army Court of Criminal Appeals overturned his death sentence, citing ineffective assistance of counsel and concerns regarding his mental health. On the 10th of March, 2009, as part of a plea agreement to avoid the death penalty, Kreutzer pleaded guilty to 1 count of premeditated murder, 18 counts of attempted premeditated murder, and other related charges. On the 24th of March, 2009, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. He was reduced in rank to E1. He stopped receiving pay and allowances, and he was dishonorably discharged. During the trial, Kreutzer stated that he wanted to send a message to the chain of command that had forgotten the welfare of the common soldier. He also expressed remorse for his actions, stating, "To each and every person that I hurt directly by shooting them, and to each and every person affected by my actions, I offer my most heartfelt, sincere apology to each of you." As of April 2025, Kreutzer has served approximately 29 years and 6 months of his life sentence. Given his sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, he is expected to remain incarcerated for the remainder of his life. He is currently held at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth.
Number 5.
Soldier Grady Wayne Wilkes. 35-year-old Grady Wayne Wilkes was a former soldier, a member of the Alabama Army National Guard, having enlisted in 2010. By 2019, he had risen to the rank of corporal and served as the leader of an infantry fire team. On the night of May 19, 2019, officers from the Auburn Police Department responded to a domestic disturbance call at the Arrowhead Trailer Park in Auburn, Alabama. The complaint was from Brooklyn Flaherty, Soldier Wilkes's live-in girlfriend and mother of his child. She reported to the police that Wilkes had physically assaulted her by grabbing her wrist and choking her. After meeting with the victim, Officer William Beekner, Officer Webb Sistrunk, Officer Ron Askelson, and Officer Evan Elliott proceeded to Wilkes's residence to confront him and find out what the issue was. As the officers approached the door and gave a knock, Wilkes opened the door wearing a military helmet and body armor, carrying a rifle. Without warning, he opened fire on the officers. Officer William Beekner was fatally shot and was taken to the hospital where he was declared dead. Officers Webb Sistrunk and Evan Elliott sustained injuries. Officer Ron Askelson was also fired upon, but was not hit. Following the shooting, Wilkes fled the scene, prompting a manhunt that lasted approximately 9 hours. He was apprehended around 7:12 a.m. the following morning, less than a mile from the scene, after a citizen provided information leading to his capture. Wilkes was indicted on charges of capital murder for the death of Officer Beekner, attempted murder for the shootings of Officers Sistrunk and Elliott, and domestic violence related to the initial assault on his girlfriend. During the trial, the prosecution presented evidence of Wilkes' premeditated intent, highlighting that he answered the door equipped with military gear and immediately engaged the officers with gunfire. The defense argued that Wilkes suffered from mental illness and did not intend to murder the officer. Wilkes also said that his reflexes and muscle memory pushed him to load the rifle and start shooting. In August 2023, the jury found Wilkes guilty of capital murder and attempted murder. Although prosecutors sought the death penalty, the jury opted for a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. During the trial, body camera footage from Officer Beekner was presented, capturing his final words after being shot, stating, "Lord, please help me." Wilkes expressed remorse, saying, "I'm so sorry, I can't put it into words. I can never make it up to you, I can never get him back. I'm so sorry." As of April 2025, Wilkes has served approximately 1 year and 8 months of his life sentence. Given that he was convicted in a civilian court for crimes committed against civilian law enforcement officers, he is serving his sentence in a state correctional facility in Alabama.
Number 6.
Timothy B. Hennis. On May 9, 1985, just a few days before Mother's Day, a horrific crime unfolded in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Catherine Eastburn, the wife of Air Force Captain Gary Eastburn, was at home with her 3 daughters, 5-year-old Kara, 3-year-old Aaron, and 22-month-old Jana, while her husband was away on military training in Alabama. To prepare for an upcoming move to England, the Eastburns decided to rehome their English setter dog, Dixie, and placed an advertisement in a local publication. Timothy Hennis, a 27-year-old Army sergeant stationed at Fort Bragg, responded to the ad and visited the Eastburn residence on May 7, 1985, to adopt the dog. On May 11, Catherine did not respond to her husband's routine phone calls. Days later, concerned neighbors noticed newspapers accumulating outside the Eastburn home and heard a baby crying inside. On May 12, authorities entered the residence and discovered a gruesome scene. Catherine had been assaulted and stabbed multiple times. Kara and Aaron were found in their bedrooms, each also stabbed. Miraculously, Jana, who is now 40, was found alive in her crib, suffering from dehydration but unharmed. While searching the house for evidence, investigators discovered fingerprints, hairs, and proof showing that someone tried to cover up the crime. Witnesses reported seeing a tall man in a members-only jacket leaving the Eastbourne residence carrying a trash bag around the time of the murders. The witness also gave a full description of the suspect, and investigators created a composite sketch which they released to the media. Following their investigations, they focused on Timothy Hennis, who had a strong resemblance to the composite sketch. He had also recently adopted the family's dog, linking him to the household. He was taken into custody, and the witnesses identified him as the suspect. Other evidence also linked him to the crime. Authorities arrested Hennis and charged him with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of assault. In 1986, Hennis stood his first trial and was convicted on all charges and sentenced to death. He was transferred to the Central Prison in North Carolina. While serving his time in prison, Hennis received an anonymous letter claiming responsibility for the Eastbourne murders. The letter was sent to the sheriff's office. In 1989, the North Carolina Supreme Court overturned his death conviction, citing prejudicial errors. Hennis was acquitted due to insufficient evidence directly linking him to the crime scene. After his acquittal, he re-enlisted in the United States Army and was promoted to the rank of Staff Sergeant, and in 2004 he retired. In 2006, advancements in DNA testing prompted a re-examination of evidence from the crime scene. Semen samples collected from Catherine Eastbourne were found to match Hennis's DNA. Due to double jeopardy protections, civilian courts could not retry him. However, the military retained jurisdiction over his case. Hennis, who had retired from the Army, was recalled to face a court-martial at Fort Bragg. The prosecution presented the DNA evidence as a pivotal link between Hennis and the crime. Despite the defense's arguments challenging the integrity of the evidence and suggesting alternative explanations, the military jury found Hennis guilty. He was sentenced to death on April 15, 2010. As of March 2025, Timothy B. Hennis has been on death row for approximately 15 years, incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. In total, he has served around 19 years in prison.
Number 7.
Hassan Karim Akbar. On the 23rd of March, 2003, at Camp Pennsylvania in Kuwait, during the initial phase of the United States invasion of Iraq, Sergeant Hassan Karim Akbar, a member of the 101st Airborne Division, launched a deadly attack against his fellow soldiers. In the early morning hours, Akbar quietly turned off the generator which powered their camp. He then threw 4 hand grenades into 3 tents where soldiers were sleeping and then opened fire with his automatic rifle firearm during the ensuing chaos. This assault resulted in the deaths of Army Captain Christopher S. Seifert and Air Force Major Gregory L. Stone, and wounded 14 other soldiers, primarily from grenade shrapnel. He was immediately subdued and taken into custody at the scene. He was charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder and multiple counts of attempted premeditated murder. News reports at the time claimed that Akbar had been recently reprimanded for insubordination and was told he would not join his unit's push into Iraq. In his diary dated the 4th of February, 2003, Akbar referred to mistreatment by his fellow soldiers, stating, "I suppose they want to punk me or just humiliate me. Perhaps they feel that I will not do anything about that. They are right about that. I am not going to do anything about it as long as I stay here. But as soon as I am in Iraq, I am going to try and as many of them as possible." His court-martial began in April 2005, where his defense attorneys argued that he suffered from mental issues, including paranoia and sleep disorders. Despite this defense, he was convicted on all charges and sentenced to death on the 21st of April, 2005. Prosecutors stated that his diary entries and his actions showed that the attack was premeditated. On the 3rd of October, 2016, he exhausted his appeals. The next step requires the President of the United States, as Commander-in-Chief, to approve his execution order. As of March 2025, Hassan Karim Akbar has been on death row at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, for nearly 20 years.
Number 8.
Ronald Adrian Gray. Ronald was born in Cochran, Georgia. He was a former United States Army soldier who became one of the most notorious serial killers and sexual offenders in military history. His crimes, committed between April 1986 and January 1987 while stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, included multiple murders and assaults. He began his series of violent offenses on April 27, 1986, with the murder of a civilian, Linda Jean Coates, a 23-year-old Campbell University student. Over the following months, he continued his spree. He abducted, assaulted, and murdered another civilian, 18-year-old Tammy Kofer Wilson. A few months later, he also abducted, assaulted, and murdered Private Laura Lee Vickery Clay, an 18-year-old soldier stationed at Fort Bragg. Before her body was found, witnesses testified that they saw Vickery Clay with a man later identified as Gray. Her body was discovered weeks later in the woods at Fort Bragg, showing evidence of assault and multiple gunshot wounds. A .22 caliber pistol, stolen by Gray in November 1986, was found near her body. A few months after Laura's murder, Gray assaulted and attempted to murder Private Marianne Lang Namath, a 19-year-old soldier. He entered her barracks under false pretenses, restrained her, and assaulted her. Despite suffering severe injuries, Namath survived and later identified Gray as her attacker. After Namath's assault on January 6, 1987, Gray assaulted and murdered a 23-year-old civilian cab driver, Kimberly Ann Ruggles. She was dispatched to pick up a passenger named Ron at Gray's address. Her body was found the next morning near her cab, showing evidence of assault and multiple stab wounds. Gray's fingerprints were found on the cab's interior, and Ruggles's fingerprints were on money in his possession. Gray's arrest happened after his photograph appeared in the news, and Private Namath identified him as the one who had attacked her. Physical evidence, including fingerprints and items linking him to the victims, further implicated him. In November 1987, Gray pleaded guilty in Cumberland County Superior Court to 22 felonies, including 2 counts of second-degree murder, multiple counts of assault, and other related charges. He received 8 life sentences, with 3 to be served consecutively. Subsequently, a military court-martial convened at Fort Bragg from December 1987 to April 1988, and he was convicted of 14 charges, including the premeditated murders of Private Vickery Clay and Kimberly Ruggles, the attempted premeditated murder of Private Namath, multiple assaults, and other offenses. On April 12, 1988, he was unanimously sentenced to death, dishonorably discharged, and reduced in rank to Private E1. The sentence was approved by the Commanding General of the 82nd Airborne Division on July 29, 1988. In July 2008, President George W. Bush approved Gray's execution, marking the first time a United States president had affirmed a military death sentence since 1957. However, subsequent legal challenges have delayed the execution. As of March 2025, Ronald Adrian Gray has been on death row at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, for approximately 37 years.
Number 9. Nidal Malik Hassan. On the 5th of November 2009 at Fort Hood, Texas, a mass shooting occurred, resulting in the deaths of 13 individuals and injuries to over 30 others. The perpetrator was Major Nidal Malik Hassan, a U.S. Army psychiatrist. This event stands as one of the most severe mass shootings on a U.S. military base. On that day, soldiers were gathered at the Soldier Readiness Processing Center undergoing medical evaluations before deployments. At approximately 1:30 p.m., Major Hassan entered the facility armed with an FN-57 semi-automatic firearm and an older .357 caliber revolver. He shouted, "Allahu Akbar," an Arabic phrase meaning "God is great," and began firing indiscriminately at military personnel and civilians. Hassan fired over 146 rounds during the attack, targeting individuals both inside the building and those attempting to flee. The rampage lasted about 10 minutes and ended when civilian police officers responded and shot Hassan, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. Following the shooting, Hassan was taken into custody and transported to a medical facility for treatment of his injuries. After he regained consciousness, he was subsequently charged with 13 counts of premeditated murder and 32 counts of attempted premeditated murder. Hassan's court-martial began on the 6th of August, 2013, during which he refused to shave his beard, stating that it was part of his religious beliefs. After so many arguments, the military judge allowed him to represent himself while still on a wheelchair. During the trial, he admitted to the shootings and offered little defense, stating that he decided to switch sides and was now against the government. He refused to call any witnesses or testify in his defense. On the 23rd of August, 2013, the military jury found Hassan guilty on all charges. 5 days later, he was sentenced to death. The sentence included forfeiture of all pay. He was still receiving paychecks during the trial, and allowances and dismissal from the service. As of March 2025, Nidal Malik Hassan remains on death row at the U.S. disciplinary barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, having served approximately 11 years and 7 months since his sentencing. Number 10.
Private Jonathan Kang Lee. 26-year-old Private Jonathan Kang Lee was a U.S. Army soldier who was stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington, United States, where he served as a signal intelligence analyst with the 201st Expeditionary Military Intelligence Brigade. Lee was born in Virginia, and he enlisted in the Army in 2017 in order to run away from the constant abuse he suffered from his parents and home. His military service included a deployment to Afghanistan, which he later described as a mission that provided him with a sense of purpose. Lee's life took a different turn when he returned to the U.S. in 2019. Between June 2020 and February 2022, while he was stationed at JBLM, he assaulted his 2 stepdaughters, one who was just 8 years old and the other just 4 years old at the time. He was charged for the crimes, and he was due to face his court-martial scheduled on the 14th of January, 2024. But he never showed up. 2 days before his sentencing for the assault crimes, he decided to desert the Army force instead of facing the sentencing for his crimes. On the day he fled, he drove away from the base in a white 2011 Honda Pilot SUV. While on the run, Lee's vehicle broke down, and he then called and paid a tow truck to take it away. He then hailed a taxi driven by 35-year-old Nicholas Hokema and requested to be taken to the South Center Mall in Tukwila, Washington. During the ride, a dispute over the ride fare started. Lee was running low on money at the time. A CCTV camera at the mall captured both of them, struggling for a while inside the car. Lee then used a knife on Hokema multiple times, resulting in his death, and left his body in the mall's parking lot before stealing the taxi and fleeing the scene. The next morning, the police discovered Nicholas's body at the parking lot of the mall, and an investigation was immediately launched for the murder. While on the run, Lee was found guilty for the assault charges against his stepdaughters and was convicted in absentia and sentenced to 64 years in prison and dishonorably discharged and removed from all military pay and benefits. After he left the murder scene, he drove to his girlfriend's house and abandoned it. The police traced the victim's car to Redmond, north of Seattle, where his girlfriend was leaving, and they found Lee there. Upon attempting to arrest him, Lee resisted, and he even jumped from a two-story window and attempted to grab the officer's gun, but was subdued and arrested. In April 2025, Lee pleaded guilty to charges including murder, desertion, resisting arrest, and failure to obey lawful orders. During his trial, he confessed to Mr. Nicholas' murder, stating that Nicholas was unarmed and just wanted to get his money before he decided to murder him. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole to be served consecutively with his previous 64-year sentence. He will be eligible for parole no earlier than 2045. As of April 2025, Lee is incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. He has served approximately 1 year and 3 months of his combined sentences. Number 11. U.S. Army Sergeant Joseph C. Bozicevich. 55-year-old Joseph C. Bozicevich was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He enlisted in the U.S. Army and rose to the rank of sergeant. He was assigned and served with the 3rd Battalion, 7th Infantry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division. In 2008, during a deployment to Iraq, Bozicevich was stationed at a forward patrol base near Baghdad. On the 14th of September 2008, at the patrol base Jerfat Sakra near Baghdad, Bozicevich fatally shot 2 fellow soldiers, Staff Sergeant Darius Dawson and Sergeant Wesley Durbin, following a confrontation. The incident occurred after the 2 victims criticized Bozicevich for poor performance, leading to an argument. Bozicevich claimed he acted in self-defense, stating that he disarmed the 2 soldiers and fired his weapon while fleeing. However, eyewitnesses reported that he shouted, "I'm going to murder you," before opening fire. He continued shooting even as one of the victims attempted to flee and pleaded for his life. After the shootings, Bozicevich was heard saying, "I did it, so what?" Bozicevich was immediately apprehended and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder. His court-martial began on the 20th of April, 2011, at Fort Stewart, Georgia. It lasted for more than 100 days, with a delay due to an injury sustained by his defense attorney. During the trial, Bozicevich claimed self-defense, alleging that the victims had threatened him with their firearms, but he disarmed them with some karate moves, then grabbed his rifle and fired blindly while fleeing, stating that I sprayed and I prayed. However, the prosecution presented substantial evidence, including the eyewitness testimonies and even Bozicevich's own statements, undermining his defense. On May 25, 2011, the military jury convicted Bozicevich of 2 counts of premeditated murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, reduced in rank to private, dishonorably discharged, and forfeited all pay and allowances. After he was sentenced, he humbly requested permission to briefly see his son before he was taken to jail, and the government attorneys granted his request. As of April 2025, Bozicevich has served approximately 13 years and 8 months of his life sentence. Given the nature of his sentence, he is expected to remain incarcerated for the remainder of his life. He is currently incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Number 12. Eddie Ray Routh. 30-year-old Eddie Ray Routh was born in Lancaster, Texas. He enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps shortly after his high school education, fulfilling a childhood ambition. He served from 2006 to 2010, with deployments to Iraq in 2007, where he worked as a prison guard and weapons repair technician, and to Haiti in 2010 for humanitarian relief following the earthquake. After his honorable discharge in 2011, Routh experienced significant mental health issues, including paranoia, auditory hallucinations, and other issues. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and was prescribed an antipsychotic and antidepressant medications. Despite recommendations for inpatient treatment, Routh declined hospitalization and ceased taking his medication, leading to a deterioration in his mental state. On the 2nd of February 2013, 38-year-old Christopher Scott Kyle, the famous Navy SEAL sniper and the author of the American Sniper book, Kyle, who was now working with veterans after he was honorably discharged from the service, was approached by Routh's mother. She was a worker at the school that his children attended. She narrated what Routh was passing through and begged Kyle to help him get back on his feet. Kyle then agreed and made the plan to take Routh to a shooting range, which he believed would take some stress off him and be therapeutic in some way. On the day of their adventure, Kyle took his friend, 35-year-old Chad Littlefield, and the three set off to the Rough Creek Lodge shooting range near Chalk Mountain, Texas. Routh, who was 25 years old at the time, had been in and out of the mental hospital after being diagnosed with severe mental health issues. He sat with Kyle and his friend inside the vehicle as they rode to the venue. During the ride, Kyle sensed some issues and texted his friend Littlefield indicating that Routh was not mentally stable. His friend replied instructing him to watch his six, which was a military slang for watch my back. The two friends were armed, but as it was just a friendly meetup and they didn't suspect any intending harm, their firearms were not unholstered and the safety catches were still on. While they were still on their way, Routh brought out his firearm and shot Kyle 6 times, and Littlefield was shot 7 times. The strategic places the shots were made indicated a clear sign of a premeditated attack. After the shooting, Routh fled the crime scene in Kyle's truck and went to a Taco Bell and bought some burritos. After he then went to his sister's house in Midlothian and told her what he had done and left to pick up his dog. His sister then immediately called 911 and reported the crime to them. The police traced him to his home, where he attempted to run again but crashed into a police car and he was arrested and charged. During his trial in February 2015, his defense attorneys argued that he was legally insane at the time of the murders. However, prosecution experts contended that Routh's actions were influenced by substance abuse and that he was aware of his wrongdoing. He showed no remorse during his sentencing hearing. After less than 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Routh guilty of capital murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While he was in prison, he disclosed that he shot the victims because they didn't talk to him, but were talking to each other during the ride. As of April 2025, he has served approximately 10 years of his life sentence. Initially, he was held at the Erath County Jail. Subsequently, due to concerns about his mental health, he was transferred to the Wayne Scott Unit, a psychiatric facility in Fort Bend County, Texas. Eventually, he was moved to the Ramsey Unit, Brazoria County, Texas, where he remains incarcerated. A memorial was held for Kyle at the Grand AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, to honor the bold legacy he left behind. During his burial, thousands of people gathered to honor and pay their last respect to him, with many waving American flags. His friend, Chad Littlefield's funeral was also held, surrounded by family, friends, and a community, grieving the loss of another life, taken too soon. Number 13. Senior Airman Andrew Paul Witt. In the early hours of the 5th of July, 2004, 2 bodies were found inside a base house at 1152 Ampere Fort Valley Street, Robins Air Force Base, Warner Robins, Georgia. Senior Airman Andy Schleipzig was discovered lying dead on his back in the living room. He had been stabbed multiple times, and his wife, Jamie Schleipzig, was also found dead, lying next to him wearing only a t-shirt and underwear. Staff Sergeant Jason King, the 3rd victim, was also discovered at a nearby hospital. undergoing emergency surgery for the serious injuries he had sustained during the violent attack carried out by Senior Airman Andrew Paul Witt. Airman Andrew was an avionics technician assigned to the 116th Air Control Wing at Robins Air Force Base in Georgia. He enlisted in the U.S. Air Force in 2001 and had been stationed at Robins AFB since August 2002. He was a close friend of Senior Airman Andy and his wife. A day before the murder, Airman Andy and his wife were having a night out in their friend's house, Staff Sergeant Jason King and his wife, when he received a call from Andrew asking if he could join them. Airman Andy accepted but left 30 minutes after Andrew arrived as he was having headaches, leaving his wife and the others. Prior to this meeting, Sergeant Jason had not met Andrew before. That night, Andrew made a pass at Jamie and tried to kiss her. She immediately pushed him away. Upon hearing this the next day, Airman Andy became very furious and began calling Andrew. Andrew was very apologetic over the phone and asked that they all meet up to talk over the matter. Andy also indicated that he would report Andrew to his superiors for questioning. After the phone calls, Andrew changed into his battle dress uniform, drove to the Schleipzigs' house where Sergeant Jason King was also with them, and stabbed all three after a series of arguments. The husband and the wife died, but King managed to escape. He then made his way down the street and stopped at the only house with a light on, the 10th Street home of Tech Sergeant Jimmy Free. Jimmy then called 911 for help. Andrew was arrested on the 5th of July, 2004, by Air Force Office of Special Investigations agents and placed in pretrial confinement. During his questioning, he initially denied carrying out the attack, but after several interrogations, he confessed. He also relieved how he pushed the bedroom door open as he was searching for Jamie to murder her. He was formally charged on the 8th of July, 2004, with 2 counts of premeditated murder and 1 count of attempted murder under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. In October 2005, a military jury convicted him of all charges and sentenced him to death. This marked the first death sentence in the Air Force since 1990. His death sentence underwent multiple appeals. In 2013, the Air Force Court of Criminal Appeals overturned the sentence due to ineffective assistance of counsel. However, the Air Force Court of Appeals reinstated the death sentence in July 2014. In July 2016, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces again reversed the death sentence and remanded the case for a new sentencing hearing. On the 6th of July, 2018, he was resentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As of April 2025, he has served approximately 20 years and 9 months of his life sentence. Number 14. Private Isaac Aguigui. Isaac Aguigui was a 22-year-old private in the U.S. Army stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia, when he carried out his numerous heinous crimes. His criminal activities include multiple homicides, including the deaths of his pregnant wife, 24-year-old Sergeant Deirdre Aguigui, and 2 civilians, Michael Rourke and Tiffany York. On the 17th of July, 2011, Sergeant Deirdre Aguigui, his wife, who was approximately 7 months pregnant, was found unresponsive in the couple's apartment at Fort Stewart. Initial autopsy reports were inconclusive regarding the cause of death. However, a subsequent examination revealed over 20 bruises and scrapes on her body, with wounds on her wrists consistent with handcuff restraints. Further analysis suggested that she could have died from asphyxiation, likely due to a strangulation. Investigators discovered handcuffs and other items indicating a staged or a well-planned crime, but the exact cause of death could not be determined. Investigations reveal that Isaac and Deirdre met at a military prep school in 2009 and were married months later. But friends testified that by the summer of 2011, their marriage had been strained by his substance use and infidelity by both spouses. Friends said Isaac doubted that the child his wife carried was his, and he wanted a divorce. Notably, hours before Deirdre's death, Isaac sent a text message to a former girlfriend stating, "We'll have plenty of money. All I need is your body whenever I want it." This pointed to a financial motive, as he received $500,000 in life insurance and death benefits following his wife's demise. Using the funds obtained from his wife's life insurance, Isaac financed and started an anti-government militia group named Forever Enduring Always Ready, FEAR. This group, composed of active duty and former soldiers, had huge plans. They aimed to stockpile weapons and orchestrate attacks to overtake their army base, Fort Stewart, and overthrow the U.S. government and carry out an attack on the president. Evidence showed the group possessed the knowledge, means, and motive to carry out their plans. Isaac utilized his military connections to recruit soldiers who were in trouble or disillusioned. The members of the group identified themselves with distinctive tattoos resembling an anarchy symbol. The group invested at least $87,000 in purchasing semi-automatic assault rifles, other firearms, and bomb components. In one of the videotapes played during his investigation, Isaac described himself as the nicest cold-blooded murderer you will ever meet. The exact number of the members of the FEAR group is not known, but a few known individuals, including 26-year-old Private First Class Michael Burnett, Sergeant Anthony Peden, and Private Christopher Salmon, including their other colleague, 19-year-old Officer Michael Rourke, all worked hand-in-hand with Isaac to plan out his attack. In December 2011, Isaac suspected that former soldier Michael Rourke, who had left the Army a few days earlier, and his 17-year-old girlfriend, Tiffany York, posed a threat to the secrecy of FEAR's operations since he was a former member. To eliminate this perceived risk, Isaac instructed Officer Michael, Anthony, and Christopher to eliminate Rourke and his girlfriend to tighten loose ends. On the night of the 4th of December, 2011, the group lured Rourke and York into the woods near Fort Stewart under the pretense of target practice. There, they were executed. York was shot twice by Officer Anthony in the head while she was exiting the vehicle, and Rourke was forced to kneel by Officer Christopher before he shot him similarly twice in the head. The murders of Rourke and York led to an investigation that uncovered the existence and activities of FEAR. Isaac, along with other members of the group, was arrested and charged. In July 2013, Isaac pleaded guilty to 2 counts of malice murder and 4 counts of violating Georgia's anti-gang law in connection with the deaths of Rourke and York. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Subsequently, in March 2014, Isaac was implicated in the murder of his wife and baby. After months of not knowing the exact cause of his wife's death, Isaac's former Army friend testified that a month after his wife's death, Isaac reportedly told him that he had handcuffed her during their intimate moments in the bedroom and placed a plastic bag over her head, causing her to die. Isaac also told investigators that his wife liked to have her hands bound during intimate moments and that she wore the handcuffs consensually. He was court-martialed for the murder of his wife, Sergeant Deirdre Aguigui, and their child, and was found guilty. He received an additional life sentence without parole. As of April 2025, Isaac Aguigui has served approximately 11 years and 9 months of his life sentences. The case of Isaac Aguigui underscores the potential dangers of extremist ideologies within military ranks and highlights the importance of vigilance in monitoring and addressing such threats. Number 15. Soldier Ryan Gibson Anderson. 47-year-old Ryan Anderson was a tank crewman with the 303rd Armor Battalion of the 81st Armor Brigade at Fort Lewis, near Tacoma. He was born in Everett, Washington, and was a former specialist in the Washington State National Guard. Anderson attended Cascade High School in Everett, and later graduated from Washington State University in 2002, with a Bachelor of Arts in History, focusing on Middle Eastern military history. During his college years, he converted from Lutheranism to Islam and adopted the name Amir Abdul Rashid. In the late 2003, while he was stationed at Fort Lewis, in Yakima, where he was training for a year-long deployment to Iraq as his National Guard unit was preparing for deployment, Anderson began visiting extremist internet chat rooms, attempting to establish contact with al-Qaeda operatives. He offered to provide information on U.S. military capabilities and weaponry. These online activities were first detected by Shannon Rossmiller, a former municipal judge in Montana who monitored Islamist jihad websites. Recognizing the potential threat, Rossmiller alerted the FBI, prompting a joint sting operation involving the Army, the FBI, and the Department of Justice. In January and February of 2004, Anderson unknowingly started engaging with undercover agents posing as al-Qaeda members. He provided them with sketches of M1A1 and M1A2 tanks, a computer disk containing his passport photo, military identification card, and weapons card. He also shared information about U.S. Army troop strengths, movements, equipment, tactics, and methods for targeting U.S. Army personnel and equipment. Notably, he detailed the exact caliber of rounds needed to penetrate the windshield and murder the driver of an up-armored Humvee. In one of his chats with a close friend, he reportedly indicated that the FBI had questioned him and was now looking into him, stating, "I just love feeling like a suspect, don't you?" His charade came to an end in the afternoon of Thursday, the 12th of February, 2004, when he was arrested at Fort Lewis, Washington, following the sting operation. Neighbors indicated that his wife, who he was leaving with at that moment, was very shocked. Anderson was charged with 5 counts of attempting to aid the enemy. His motivations for attempting to aid al-Qaeda appear to come from a desire to belong and being accepted, as they were clear evidence by his online activities seeking connection. His court-martial began on the 31st of August, 2004, at Fort Lewis. During the trial, the defense argued that Anderson suffered from bipolar disorder and Asperger's syndrome, conditions that allegedly impaired his judgment and led to role-playing behaviors. Despite this defense, on the 3rd of September, 2004, the military jury found Anderson guilty on all counts. He was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. He was demoted to the rank of a private and dishonorably discharged from the Army. As of April 2025, Ryan G. Anderson has served approximately 20 years and 8 months of his life sentence. Given his sentence includes the possibility of parole, he may be eligible for parole consideration. He remains incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. He is the second Muslim soldier with Fort Lewis connections to be accused of wrongdoing related to the war on terrorism. Number 16. Ali Hamza Ahmad Suleiman. Ali Hamza Ahmad Suleiman was born in Al-Hudaydah, Yemen. He was a Yemeni national who became a prominent figure within al-Qaeda, serving as Osama bin Laden's media secretary. His role involved producing propaganda materials aimed at recruiting and inspiring terrorist activities against the United States. Notably, he created a 2-hour al-Qaeda recruitment video, glorifying the bombing of the USS Cole, and scripted video wills for 2 of the 11th of September hijackers. Hamza was captured on the 15th of December, 2001, near Parachinar, while attempting to cross into Pakistan from Afghanistan. He was subsequently transferred to U.S. custody on the 26th of December, 2001, and detained at the Guantanamo Bay detention camp, where he has been held since 2002. In 2008, he was charged before a military commission with conspiracy, solicitation to commit murder, and providing material support for terrorism. He chose to boycott the proceedings, refusing legal representation and remaining silent throughout the trial. Despite his non-participation, the military jury convicted him on all charges and sentenced him to life imprisonment. His conviction underwent multiple appeals and legal challenges. In January 2013, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit overturned his convictions, ruling that the charges were not internationally recognized as war crimes at the time of his actions. However, in October 2016, the full D.C. Circuit reinstated the conspiracy conviction, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review the case in October 2017. Number 17. Soldier Dwight Jeffrey Loving. Former soldier Dwight Jeffrey Loving was born in Rochester, New York. He was a private first class in the United States Army stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. On December 11, 1988, Loving entered 2 convenience stores and robbed them, obtaining only less than $100. In order to obtain additional funds, he targeted local taxi drivers. On the evening of December 24, 1988, Loving hailed a cab driven by 20-year-old Army Private Christopher Fay, an active-duty soldier working part-time as a taxi driver. He directed Fay to a secluded area within Fort Hood, where he robbed him at gunpoint. After taking Fay's money, he shot him in the back of the head. After he shot him, he observed that Fay was still moving, and he shot him a second time, making sure he was dead. Fay's body was discovered shortly thereafter by another soldier. Shortly after, about a few minutes later that same day, Loving called for another cab, which was driven by 44-year-old retired Army Master Sergeant Bobby Charbino. Using a similar tactic, Loving had Charbino drive to a secluded location in Killeen, Texas. There, he robbed Charbino and shot him in the head, resulting in his death. After the second murder, he went out and socialized with his girlfriend and others at local nightclubs. Later that evening, Loving attempted to rob a third cab driver, Howard Harrison. During the robbery, Harrison managed to struggle with Loving, disarming him and escaping with injuries. This encounter provided crucial evidence leading to Loving's apprehension. The following day, a joint task force comprising Federal Bureau of Investigation agents, Texas Rangers, and United States Army Criminal Investigation Division agents arrested Loving. He provided a videotaped confession detailing the murders and attempted murder, which became a pivotal piece of evidence in his trial. He confessed that he killed his first victim to see if he could get away with it, and killed his second one for fun. In March 1989, Loving was tried by a military court-martial at Fort Hood. On April 3, 1989, he was convicted of 2 counts of premeditated murder, attempted murder, and multiple counts of robbery. The court-martial panel unanimously sentenced him to death. Loving was 21 years old at the time of his sentencing. His conviction and death sentence underwent extensive appellate review. In 1996, the United States Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of his death sentence. Subsequent appeals were unsuccessful. On January 17, 2017, just a few days before leaving the presidential office, President Barack Obama commuted his death sentence to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The commutation specified that Loving would not have any rights to parole or sentence suspension. Following his sentencing, Loving was incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the United States military's maximum security facility. As of April 2025, Dwight Jeffrey Loving, who is currently 57 years old, has served approximately 36 years and 4 months of his life sentence. Given the terms of his commutation, he will remain imprisoned for the remainder of his life. Number 18. Soldier Joseph Santiago. Sergeant First Class Joseph Santiago was a 5th Special Forces Group soldier stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He enlisted in the Army in 2007 and was serving as a signal support specialist. On the 16th of September, 2021, At their on-base residence, Santiago assaulted his 33-year-old wife, Megan, who was 8 months pregnant at the time. He struck her, causing severe injuries. Megan was transported to Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee, where she underwent an emergency surgery. Despite medical efforts, she died to her injuries less than 2 weeks later. Their baby girl survived the birth and was reported to be in stable condition. Santiago was arrested the day after the assault and held at Grayson County Jail, pending investigation by the U.S. Criminal Investigation Division. During the court-martial, evidence was presented that Megan had expressed fears for her safety, sending messages and photos to friends and family indicating that Santiago might murder her. Some of her friends even planned to intervene and help out, but tragically they were unable to do so in time. During his trial, the emergency operator testified that when they arrived at the scene and saw Megan beaten at their home, they asked if she had any medical history, but Santiago replied that he didn't know. Santiago's mother also testified that Santiago witnessed his father beat her up as a child, and he decided to walk in his father's ways. She expressed remorse for not removing him from that environment, though his father denied the abuse claim against him instantly. Santiago himself expressed deep remorse in court, apologizing to Megan's family and acknowledging his failure as a husband and father. Megan's family provided emotional testimony about her life and the impact of her loss. Her cousins described her as a loving and joyful person, and they recounted the pain of informing Megan's mother of her death. When he was asked to speak, Santiago started sobbing, showing signs of remorse, and turned to his wife's family and told them that he was sorry and asked for forgiveness, and also stated that he misses his wife. He pleaded not guilty. However, he was found guilty of 1 specification of murder and 1 specification of injury to an unborn child, in violation of Articles 118 and 119A of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. He was acquitted of 2 specifications of domestic violence. On the 2nd of August, 2023, Santiago was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus an additional 6 months for injuring the child. He was also reduced in rank to E1 private and received a dishonorable discharge. As of April 2025, Santiago has served approximately 1 year and 8 months of his sentence and is incarcerated in a military correctional facility. Number 19. Army Ranger SBC. Patrick Philip Byrne. 29-year-old Patrick Philip Byrne was a U.S. Army Ranger assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State. He joined the military after being inspired by the events of the 11th of September, 2001, and served multiple deployments, including a recent 2-month tour in Afghanistan before the incident. Byrne had a documented history of traumatic brain injuries, including a blast concussion and a significant fall during a parachute jump where his chute failed to deploy properly. On the night of the 17th of July, 2021, Byrne was out drinking with fellow soldiers in downtown Tacoma, Washington. During the evening, he became involved in a bar altercation and was punched in the face, allegedly losing consciousness briefly. After regaining consciousness, Byrne wandered the streets alone. Around 2 a.m. that night, Byrne approached the building where 41-year-old Denise Smith was working as a security guard. Smith had only been on the job for a few days. When Byrne attempted to enter the building, Smith confronted him, indicating that he was not permitted inside as they were closed. Surveillance footage captured Byrne forcibly entering the building and launching a brutal attack on Smith that lasted approximately 10 minutes. He dragged her by the hair, punched her repeatedly, attacked her with her keys, and attempted to launch more brutal attack on her face. He then flipped Smith onto her stomach and choked her until she couldn't take it again. He continued to apply pressure for at least another minute. The whole ordeal lasted for about 11 minutes. After the attack, Byrne fled the scene, jumping from a 14-foot landing and injuring himself. He was later found by paramedics exhibiting signs of confusion and claiming he had been assaulted, though there was no evidence to support his claims. Smith's body was discovered by a co-worker later that morning around 6 a.m. Her face was beyond recognition, and despite everything the medical team tried, she was pronounced dead at the scene. Byrne was arrested shortly after the incident. Initially charged with multiple offenses, including first-degree murder, burglary, and kidnapping, he ultimately pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in March 2024. During the trial, Byrne's defense team argued that his actions were influenced by his history of traumatic brain injuries and the head trauma sustained earlier that night. However, the prosecution contended that Byrne's voluntary intoxication and deliberate actions led to the unprovoked attack. During his sentencing, he cried and expressed remorse, stating that he wished that he hadn't gone out to drink that day. He also apologized to the victim's family. The murder of Denise Smith had a profound impact on her family and the local community. Smith's relatives expressed their grief and anger, emphasizing the loss of a kind-hearted and dedicated member of their family. On May 10, 2024, Byrne was sentenced to 20 years in prison, the minimum sentence for first-degree murder under Washington state law. The victim's sister expressed that the 20-year sentence he got is not sufficient for the brutal crime he committed against her sister, but she was glad that he will be in prison for a long time. As of April 2025, he has served approximately 11 months of his sentence, with about 19 years remaining. Byrne is currently incarcerated in a Washington state correctional facility. The case also highlighted concerns about mental health support for military personnel and the potential consequences of untreated traumatic brain injuries. Number 20. Soldier, Ricci, Chambless, Bradden. Ricci Chambless, who was originally from Dallas, Texas, was a U.S. Army soldier who served and was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. At the time of the incident in 2016, Bradden was 23 years old. On May 2, 2016, Bradden confronted his wife, Quenisha Johnson, at her workplace, a Walgreens store located at 5600 New York Avenue, NU in Arlington, Texas. The confrontation happened because of Bradden's anger over a selfie his wife had posted on Facebook, which he found inappropriate, and he said the picture was attracting attention to her. During the altercation, Bradden shot his wife Johnson in the ankle. She ran and started looking for help and a place to hide. As she sought help inside the store, Anthony T.J. Antel Jr., a 35-year-old Marine veteran and father of 3, intervened. Antel quickly retrieved a firearm from his vehicle. He then approached Bradden and ordered him to the ground and held him at gunpoint while calling 911. During this standoff, Bradden managed to grab Antel's firearm and, in a tragic turn, shot Antel, murdering him instantly in front of his wife and children. After running away, Bradden later turned himself into the authorities. He was charged with murder for the death of Antel and aggravated assault for shooting his wife. During the trial, Bradden claimed self-defense, asserting that Antel had pointed the firearm at him. However, the prosecution argued that Bradden's actions were deliberate and unjustified. A CCTV footage shown in court indicated that Antel was just trying to stop Bradden from fleeing the scene. During the sentencing, the victim's wife stated between tears that the death of her husband still haunts her and her children, and they cannot confidently drive down certain streets or corner stores, as her children keep asking if that is where their father was. Shot. On the other hand, Bradden's wife, who was shot, stated that she was just trying to move forward as she was blessed to be alive. The jury found Bradden guilty of both charges. In January 2018, he was sentenced to 75 years in prison for the murder of Antel and 20 years for the aggravated assault on his wife. The sentences are to be served concurrently. Bradden's attorney indicated plans to appeal the verdict, citing the Castle Doctrine, which allows the use of force in certain situations within one's home, vehicle, or workplace. As of April 2025, Ricci Chambless Bradden remains incarcerated, serving his 75-year sentence. Having been sentenced in January 2018, he has served approximately 7 years of his term. Given the length of his sentence and the nature of his crimes, Bradden is not eligible for parole until he has served a significant portion of his sentence, as determined by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Number 21. Soldier Frank Rongi. 7-year-old Sergeant Frank J. Rongi was born in Niles, Ohio, and was a U.S. Army soldier assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division, stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. In January 2000, while on peacekeeping duty in Vitina, Kosovo, Rongi committed a heinous crime that shocked the international community. On the 13th of January 2000, Rongi entered the apartment building of an 11-year-old ethnic Albanian girl, Merita Shabiu, under the pretense of searching for a 23-year-old woman with whom he had been flirting wise. Failing to find the woman, Rongi encountered Merita and lured her into the basement. There, he assaulted and murdered her by strangulation. He then hid her body under a stairway, covering it with flour to conceal blood stains, and later he returned and placed her remains in 2 UN flour sacks, which he buried beneath the snow on a nearby hilltop. He was arrested after he did not attend their routine patrol as he was trying to hide the body. He was stripped of his pay, rank, and was dishonorably discharged from the Army. During his court-martial, he expressed little or no remorse, but apologized to the victim's family and asked that they should forgive him. He also stated that prior to the incident that he has not been found guilty of any other crime and he has not committed any crime before, stating that he knew that what he did was wrong, which is why he pleaded guilty. The 6-officer panel deliberated for less than an hour before they all sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As of April 2025, Frank Rongi has served over 25 years of his sentence, and he remains incarcerated, serving his life sentence.
Thank you guys for watching.